Good morning, Patriots. This is Jay Delancey, alias Vote Checker, and today is October 6th, 2021. The proverb for today is Proverbs 6. A lot of practical warnings in there, so I had to take one, and I decided to go with number 23. It says, "For the commandment is a lamp, and the teaching a light, and the reproofs of discipline are the way of life." I know it's weird wording, but the reproofs of discipline, corrections, are a way of life. Where we go wrong is when we're too proud to admit that we ever make mistakes. And yours truly is the first, and I've made many mistakes. I'm not too proud to admit it. However, not going to make that the subject of today's broadcast. It's just not the point. The point is we all grow stronger and better when we have wise counsel from friends who can guide us and help us to learn how to function in life. That's what parents are good for, even though when I was a teenager, my parents weren't that smart, but they sure did get smarter as I got older. So anyway, you know the thing. Okay, okay. Now, so speaking of corrections, that's where we're at today. You might have seen some news. I'm going to go to my screen share on this for the actual briefing we'll be doing here. That will be posted later, because you guys on Facebook are just watching me walk through it and talk through it. But ultimately, what we're going to do is show it, and it's a video podcast. And it starts with big news that if you haven't heard about it, you should know about this. It's the court yesterday, a 3-judge panel sided with the left in North Carolina. And they said McCrory backers can be sued for defaming 2016 voters. Now, you have to go in the Wayback Machine to understand what this is. So I'm going to give you the historical, just to remind some of you what happened. Everything we saw that happened in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan with 2020, I think it was beta tested in 2016. I can't prove it, but I can suspect it. So let me just draw some lines for you and then let you reach your own conclusions. And there's some humor in this. There's also some tragedy because of people involved in it. So I'm talking about this WRAL article. It was also in the local RAG newspaper, but that's a subscriber-based product, and I don't want to subsidize the enemy more than I have to. And until WRAL puts a paywall up, I guess we'll have to quote them instead. So it's the devil that doesn't charge as much as the devil who does. So here we go. All right, the court. McCrory backers can be sued for defaming 2016 voters. Now, what happened in 2016? Anybody remember? Anybody? Bueller? Okay. I'm going to go over part of it. Durham County, there's a headline I'll link to. This is Durham County defends ballot count. Fire burned South End townhouses. A WFAE Charlotte article. Let me just read a little bit of this. I could just paraphrase it, but Durham County Elections Board is defending itself against charges by Governor Pat McCrory's campaign of wrongful or illegal conduct in last Tuesday's ballot count. After troubles on election day, the heavily Democrat county reported 94,000 ballots late. The election board released a detailed description of what happened. I need to find that. I need to get that. If any of you have it, please send it to me. I'd love to see their alibi of what happened. The third paragraph in here says McCrory was, this is important, McCrory was in the lead for much of election night until the 94,000 Durham voters were reported shortly before midnight. That turned the advantage to Democrat Attorney General Roy Cooper. Cooper leads by about 5,000 votes, though the count isn't final. Okay, that began a big battle over 94,000 ballots. Not the entire Durham count, just those 94,000. That was a blunder on McCrory's part, because the way that worked out was all of the voting was complete, all the vote counts were complete, and nothing had happened for a couple of hours. But nobody was going to declare McCrory the winner, because in doing so, they would have also had to have declared Buck Newton the winner of the Attorney General race and Chuck Stuber the winner of the state auditor race. This was a Trump blowout election. A lot of people voted Republican that nobody had anticipated. So in 2016, the vote count in North Carolina was halted after everybody had been counted except for, well, Durham had not reported yet. They were waiting to be the last, and they had a plausible excuse, but there was no reason for them to wait that long, except that, well, they found 94,000 ballots they had not counted before. They had somehow forgotten to count those ballots. And then lo and behold, those 94,000 ballots flipped the 3 state offices that Republicans were about to gain control of. The 3 offices that had subpoena power. Funny how that works. The Attorney General, the State Auditor, and the Governor, all 3 offices just magically flipped from Republican to Democrat because of the Durham 94,000 ballots. Now, I didn't put a lot of stock in the idea that election officials were rigging elections. So bad on me. I think 2020 has changed my opinion. Actually, things that happened in 2018 is, to be more precise, the way the Mark Harris contest was treated by election officials made me realize that these people are just as dirty as any politician you ever met. Only they're the ones we entrust to count the ballots because of the chicanery. There's one book out on that already called 13 Ballots by Elizabeth Harris. I recommend that book. There's also another book coming out November 16th, the date I can hardly wait for, written by Nick Oshner and somebody else. I don't remember the guy's name, but I've pre-ordered it at Amazon. I think I did. I intend to, because that's the other historical archive of what happened in that election. The point is, the election officials are as corrupt as any politicians you would want, and that the way Mark Harris was treated and mistreated and abused and basically cheated out of his office that he won lawfully by almost 1,000 votes, his congressional seat. That tells me all I need to know about how corrupt election officials can be. Am I saying all of them are corrupt? No, I'm just saying it's the 97% that make the rest of them look bad. Okay, that's a joke. There's enough corrupt that they can do anything they want to. And there's a lot going out in this area, but in 2016, we saw what everyone called in 2020 the Biden bump. We saw it. It was the Durham dump, where suddenly all these ballots flipped over the 3 races in North Carolina that all have subpoena power. And once again, for the 100 and, I'm gonna do public math here and do a horrible job at it, 16 and 2, for the 118th year in a row, North Carolinians, while they might have voted Republican statewide, they still wanted their Attorney General to be a Democrat for the 118th year in a row. Just say it. No Republican has ever been elected in North Carolina in modern history into the Attorney General spot. And I find that mighty interesting. Of course, if I dig into that too much, it probably means I'll be either in jail or living in another state, because our attorney generals are, they're an odd lot. And I think the Democrats do not want to let go of that, but I digress. McCrory lost by 5,000 votes that night, and he sued and sued and sued and finally fought for a recount of just those 94,000 ballots. And the election officials in Durham and in Raleigh, the North Carolina State Board of Elections, they fought and fought against the recount. They delayed, drag it out. not a hand-eye recount of every ballot in the state. They just ran the 94,000 ballots right through the same machines they had counted them on the night before. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, the things we know now that we didn't know then. What if they had done an Arizona-style audit the next day? What if they had looked at those ballots right away? What would have happened, I wonder? But we will never know. Those ballots are long destroyed. They had months of litigation delay, and the 94,000 ballots said exactly what there was said the night before, only in doing it, they found that, oh, it increased Cooper's lead over McCrory by just a scant, let's see if the number's in here. It's not in the FAE article. Let's see. It says there was a later WITN article that said Durham defends handling of 90,000 ballots in governor's race. Let's see if it covers a key fact I would like to highlight. It's 94,000, by the way. What happened? When it was all over, I can't find the exact number, but it was all said and done. Cooper had won by something like 10,022 or something like that. It was just a skosh. That's Nodak. That's North Dakota for a small amount. A skosh of votes over 10,000, which 10,000 is a magic number in North Carolina general statute, because if a candidate statewide race loses by less than 10,000, they can call for a taxpayer-funded recount. It's a show recount because they're going to run the same ballots through the same machines. So it's a limited risk recount, if you will. But Cooper just happened to win just a tad over that amount. So McCrory would have to pay for a recount. He wouldn't have to pay for it because you're not going to find 10,000 ballots in such a controlled environment as a machine recount. It's just a waste of money, a waste of time. It's like they want you to go there. It's like, don't throw me in the briar patch. It's like, okay, we'll do a recount. Okay. Yeah. No, what they needed was a full forensic audit 2016. But nobody thought of that back then, because in order to say, when Cooper won it and it was declared the winner, in order to say there was fraud, I would have to say that election officials colluded to rig the election. And I wasn't ready to say that. I'm not going to make that hideous a claim even now, except that there is some evidence that suggests, you can make the inductive argument that these people's hands are not clean. Now, that was 2016. Now let's go back to today. I'm a little bit more to say about that, but I'm not going to show articles on it. But what happened right after the election, Cooper's attorneys, one of them, I don't remember who, but one of them from DC called us and said, what do you recommend? And we told them what we recommended. And they ignored us, and they did what they wanted to do. And they instead sent out spreadsheets to people who were loyal to Cooper and said, challenge these voters. We need them challenged now. That was a bad blunder. One of the people they reached out to was one of our guys, one of our, I'll go ahead and say his name, it's public record, to a guy in Fayetteville named Jerry Reinold. Jerry's no fool. Jerry did his own research. He looked at the spreadsheet and he went through, and because what they had done was they sent him, I think, 7 names. Jerry could correct me on this, and he probably will, but they sent him a small number of names and said, challenge these voters. Jerry knows better than to challenge based on a spreadsheet. And we know better. We've done it. We did it once. It's a mistake we won't make again. We only don't do that. We do not challenge from spreadsheets. That's called data. It is not called evidence. So Jerry took the spreadsheet that the McCrory people gave him, and he researched it himself and developed evidence on 2 voters. 2 voters that Jerry is convinced either voted illegally or whose identity was stolen and somebody else voted in their name. But there were 2 voting credits assigned to those two voters. It is what it is. Jerry referred that, and to our knowledge, that referral went all the way to the district attorney's office in Cumberland County, where it has quietly been resting for 5 years now. But there is no statute of limitations, and we'll see about that one. The point is, Jerry knew better than to go out and just do frivolous, just to say, okay, McCrory told me to do it, and I'll do it. Two other people who did not know, they were not as smart as Jerry. They had not been with us. They were strangers to us. And bless their hearts, they meant well. They were loyal to McCrory, and McCrory was desperate to win. So instead of following our advice, they went their own route and did this. And what did they do? They sent hundreds of spreadsheets all across the state. And I don't know the exact numbers that these people got, but two people I will highlight on this are a guy named Clark Porter and a guy you might have heard of named McCrae Dowless. That was when McCrae got a big bullseye put on his chest by the Democrat Party of North Carolina and by the Democrat establishment in Bladen County. But I'll set that aside. I want to talk about Clark right now because we're going to go back to the story of the McCrory article on WRAL, because Clark, now see, you got to realize when you file this challenge, you are filing something under North Carolina law. Actually, before I go to the article, I want to nail this down. Now, for those who watch the actual video briefing, I will show you a recording of my desktop. And what it's doing is showing, make sure I'm recording it. Yes, okay. It is showing the North Carolina General Assembly webpage. That's ncleg.gov. And if you go on that page, there's a tab that says Bills and Laws, and there's a tab there that says General Statutes, Table of Contents. Now, when you scroll into that, our favorite chapter in the whole dealio is 163. Why? Because that's where election law is covered. And we love that chapter. In fact, anybody, if you want to become useful in the area of election law, election integrity, you will do well to start by going through chapter 163 of the North Carolina General Statutes. Just read it. Back when it was only 300 pages, I bought me one of them cheap printers and printed off every bit of it and read it, highlighted it. I was still in the military, and that was my work I did at night. You got to learn that law. And we learned some of it. Some of it we still don't realize, wow, I hadn't thought of that. I didn't realize it applied that way. But 163 dash, actually it's called Article 8, covers challenges. And citizens have an absolute right to challenge the validity of another voter. Let's see, right to challenge. When challenge may be made, any registered voter may challenge the right of any person to register, remain registered, or vote in such county. No such challenge may be made after the 25th day before each primary, general, or special election. There's two kinds of challenges. There's one that you do right up before the election, and there's one you do the rest of the year. We have never, Voter Integrity Project has never filed challenges during that 25-day election window. It's just too dangerous. It's too fluid. There are situations where we would advise it, but we haven't done that yet. We reserve that right. But there are grounds for challenge, and the grounds are, I'm going to read them to you. It says such challenges may be made only for one or more of the following reasons: that the person is not a resident of the state of North Carolina, or that person is not a resident of the county at which the person is registered. Let's see, there's more blah, blah, blah. But anyway, it says that person is not a resident of the precinct. That person is not 18 years old. That person has been adjudged guilty of a felony. That's 5 reasons. That person is dead. I have to pause now because I've been interrupted by a phone call and I have to let this phone play out. So we're going to pick up in just a moment. If you're hearing me do this, Let me repeat that. If the person is dead, that is reason number 6. Number 7 is that person is not a citizen of the United States. Or when it's a municipal election, that person is not a resident of that municipality. Or number 9, one of our favorites, that person is not who he or she represents himself or herself to be. I like number 9 for election day challenges. When people walk in and they're reading their name off of a piece of paper, I would say, yeah, that's section 9. Yeah, I would do that, but that's just me. All right, the whole chapter goes through all this. Now, what Cooper's people did, they didn't give all the reasons. They didn't train their people in what to do. They just had lawyers like Roger Knight fill out the mass mailing paperwork and send out the information to the counties. And Roger was involved in that to some degree. He's a big GOP lawyer. I don't know who else is involved in that. I just happen to know that Roger was. And it didn't. There were national lawyers directing this, and GOP lawyers carrying it out, and they filed these challenges. Now, they were just following the law, but they didn't understand procedure. And believe me, there's nothing worse than walking into a challenge hearing and realizing you don't have any evidence. I've done that once, and I won't do it again. Jerry understood that. Jerry didn't do it. McRae didn't understand that. He just trusted McCrory and he did it. Nor did Clark Porter. Clark did not understand it. He just trusted McCrory and he did it. And if you're looking at the video later, there's McCrory's smiling face in this article. It's a good picture of him because WRL would love to see him in the Senate, or love to see him as a Republican Senate nominee, I should say, because they know he'll lose. Okay, now what happened was the left went out and looked at those challenges. And I didn't read the wording of the challenges, but the implication is that somebody voted illegally. And that is not proper implication that we advocate. When we challenged people who we allege did not live in the precinct, we made it very clear that either this person voted illegally or somebody else voted illegally in that person's name. Because there's so many people who are inactive, who suddenly vote. We don't know if they're still living there or if they are people who were just on the rolls and somebody else walked in and voted in their name. We know it happens, and we also know tons of people walk in and vote in other people's names. What we don't know is where they're getting the names. We think maybe they're inactive. They're not dead because the deads are too easy to catch. They're kind of the modern dead, but that's a whole nother story for another day. The point is, instead of being clear in that argument that McCrory's people, the challengers said, hey, we're not saying anybody voted illegally here by name on this list. All we're saying is that there were illegal votes cast in the name of that person. And maybe they'd have gotten away with it, but the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, Anita Earls, by the way, was involved in that. She's now on the state Supreme Court. Maybe she should recuse herself of anything dealing with this, just saying, because she initiated the challenges on this. And they went after these poor, dumb volunteers. Forgive me, Clark, but dumb is probably too strong a word. I'll say naive. I'll say that to McRae too. They didn't know what they didn't know. And honestly, I don't think the McCrory attorneys understood how ugly this would turn out for his volunteers. However, this has been a real mess and nothing had happened for a while on this. Now, Clark Porter is mentioned in the article. It says here, the judges also decided, however, that William Clark Porter, a GOP official in Greensboro, whose signature was on one of the election protests, was filed, is entitled to a legal defense that would likely clear him of defamation claims because he participated in a quasi-judicial election protest proceeding. Okay, that didn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to unpack that for you. I called Clark last night as soon as I read this article to ask him how he's doing. Are you in danger? yeah, this has affected Clark's health. It's very stressful to it, just like it affected McCrae's health. Clark told me last night that he'd already been called by the GOP attorneys to say, you're in the clear. You're not in trouble. They've left you off. So it says here, the judges decided that William Clark Porter is entitled to a legal defense that would likely clear him of defamation claims because he participated in a quasi-judicial election protest proceeding. Because I didn't think he protested. I thought he challenged, but WRL, they get nothing wrong, right? So if they say it's a protest, then I guess it was a protest. This is my bad. We'll double check that. The point is, quasi-judicial election proceedings, protest proceedings are allowed, as are challenge proceedings. So Clark participated in that, and they went after him. I would say Clark doesn't need a legal defense. He was just a stand-in for the people who gave him the spreadsheet. And Clark should be dismissed from this case right there. He had nothing to do with it. He was just a local county guy, because under North Carolina laws, you have to be somebody in that county to file the protest or the challenge. Were that not the case, we would have filed a lot more challenges than we did, because we always had to find someone and train them up. And we rejected a lot of people who were going to do challenges for us because it's dangerous. It's dangerous work. Okay, and Allison Riggs, somebody I'll introduce you to in a moment, she said, Mr. Porter was not the puppet master. He was the puppet. And obviously, he did make serious allegations against our clients. But this is a good ruling for us. I need to review those transcripts to see exactly what serious allegations Clark made. The fact is, Clark, which is doing the dirty work of, as Allison put it, the puppet master. And so Allison, telegraphing her passes, said, we believe that we now can proceed against the masterminds of this concerted effort to defame North Carolina voters. See how she pivoted there? They are going to go after the money people behind the McCrory effort on this. That way they can dissuade anybody from ever supporting a Republican gubernatorial candidate. After all, the left is going to make sure the governor has all the tools he needs as long as it's one of theirs. It's kind of like think the way Trump got all kinds of static from not just the cultural left, but also the cultural Marxists working within the Department of Justice and everywhere else. WRL continues. It says McCrory is not personally named as a defendant in a case that involves 4 Brunswick and Guilford County voters. His backers could appeal Tuesday's decision to the state Supreme Court. Again, I wonder if Anita Earls will recuse herself from that if there is an appeal to the state Supreme Court. The law firm alleged to have ghostwritten the election protests Porter submitted did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Craig Schauer, S-C-H-A-U-E-R, I apologize if I'm getting your name wrong, Craig, it's no disrespect, said a Raleigh-based attorney who defended McCrory's supporters in a March appeals court hearing argued at the time that Porter, the law firm, and legal defense fund all had the absolute right to make statements about unlawful ballots shortly after the election, regardless of whether the comments were defamatory. Schauer added that the lawsuit could stifle free speech by discouraging members of the public from voicing their concerns about possible voting irregularities. Thank you, Craig Schauer. I love you, man. I love you. That's the real deal. You have to have an absolute right to file these challenges and to let the quasi-judicial proceeding determine who's who, determine who's right and who's wrong. It is not a case of running out and just publicly defaming somebody. It is a case of filing a legal proceeding because you genuinely believe that there's a problem. And what do? You go through the trouble of filing a proceeding. That's like filing a divorce and making some spurious claims in the divorce about your spouse. It's a filing, for goodness sakes, and you can't sue them for defamation and a filing. Maybe you can, but I never heard of that. Generally, what happens is if it's too hideous, the judge will seal the the filing, and they'll just keep it quiet unless you run against a Democrat or a progressive against office, like Obama. When never mind, the guy who ran against him, they unsealed his divorce records somehow, so the guy got defamed because of what his ex-wife said, and it was just divorces are ugly. But I digress. Shower is saying, and again, I apologize if I'm getting it wrong with his name. I like this guy. He said this lawsuit can stifle free speech by discouraging members of the public from voicing their concerns about possible voting irregularities. This is a critical lawsuit that needs to go forward. And I support Craig Shower, and I support the McCrory team as long as they'll go forward on this, because it's very important. Meanwhile, Allison Riggs, as we wrap up this article, it's really funny. Let's see. I'm going to read it off very carefully. Riggs said her organization is likely to focus on the law firm and legal defense fund, though it could choose to ask the Supreme Court to make Porter susceptible to a defamation lawsuit. Okay, so they still want to reserve the right to go and ruin Porter's life, because if they can't get the money people, they want to punish the minions at the ground level who filed the challenges. That's how despicable these leftists are. They go after everybody. It's like that Robert De Niro character wanting everyone dead who was associated with his enemy, including the guy's barber. I want his mailman. I want his gardener. I want them all dead. And that's the way these thugs operate, is they want everybody who had anything to do with McCrory dead, politically or financially. If it affects your health, well, so be it, because this is not good for you to have this kind of pressure. And Clark, I met him through this, and he's been under a lot of pressure for a long time. You might pray for Clark and his health, and pray for McCrae, because McCrae is still living this nightmare as well. Anyway, the lawsuit accuses the supporters of participating in a civil conspiracy, put that word in quotes, that harmed voters' reputations. As a result, they are seeking damages in excess of $25,000. McCrory here we go. Here's the number. McCrory lost the election by 10,277 votes, or 22 percentage 0.22 percentage points, which fell outside of the 10,000 vote recount threshold. What a lucky break for Roy Cooper and for Josh Stein and for all that, because a recount would have affected all of them. What a lucky break. Gosh darn. 277 votes over the mandatory recount threshold. Gosh, isn't Cooper just the luckiest guy you ever saw? Okay, but enough of that. I'm going to skip over part of this. Riggs, I'm going to close out with Riggs, because Riggs actually stumbled into something that was like a stopwatch, or never mind, I'll get there in a minute. While it's been nearly 5 years since McCrory's gubernatorial loss, Riggs said the lawsuit carries extra importance because of former President Donald J. Trump's repeated lies that he won the last presidential election. That's the left's story, and we're stuck with it because they write the songs. Okay, Allison stumbled into the truth if you only take half of what she said. This is quoting Allison Riggs. What we saw happen in the 2016 election was a precursor to the big lie that we saw in the 2020 election. Full stop. Shazam, Allison. You're absolutely right. Smartest human being on the planet. What we saw happen in the 2016 election was a precursor to the big law that we saw in the 2020 election, the big lie. So the Durham dump in 2016 became the Biden bump in 5 states. Okay, I'm going to leave it there with Allison. I'm going to leave it here with this. This is why we must do a full forensic audit of North Carolina's electoral process. Now I'm going to stop my screen share and close by moving my camera to the shirt. And those of you who are on Facebook, I think you can see the shirt. It says, "Uncover the Truth. We want a full forensic audit." LFG, that's Liberty First Grassroots. Liberty First Grassroots. That's the group that made this shirt, and I support them on this. Look, if we don't get to the bottom of this before it's too late, we will have the Durham dump, the Biden bump, we'll have it everywhere. And these politicians in North Carolina who are fighting us on this, well, Democrats, I understand why they're fighting us on it. Republicans, I don't understand why, except they're either scared or they're in on it too. This is ugly. These are your people that you and I voted for. I question the integrity of any politician if they're afraid to do this. No, I'll give you one other category, and that is the people who realize they're not in control and there's nothing they can do. So there's some that are innocent, honest, and just they're going to continue to do the work while they're in the legislature as long as they can to uphold freedom and uphold integrity in our gubernatorial process. But they're powerless to do anything about it. So I'll give them three categories. Either they are afraid to touch it. Either corrupt. They are in on it. They cut their own deal with the devil to get the job they got, to win the election they got. That's one category. The other category is they're, that's evil. The other is stupid. They're too dumb to push back against their leadership. And they don't realize their leadership is selling them out, because at the end of the day, they're all going to lose. They are going to lose if they don't get to the bottom of this before it's too late. And the third category is the people who feel totally powerless but have resigned themselves to doing what they can while God still has them in elected office. What we need is those powerless people who care about the truth but feel powerless. We need them to step up and take a voice and have an internal fight within their caucuses against their leadership, because their leadership is selling out the people of North Carolina. If they get their way, what'll happen is we'll wake up in 2022, we'll have a Republican majority, or Democrat majority in both houses, and we'll go, well, what are you going to do? That's what the results were. And then it'll be too late to do anything, because Republicans will have no access to the levers of power to actually do something about it. Then we all just run around like kooks talking about how the elections were stolen until they lock us up or send us over to their re-education camps. And the elections were honest, everything is fine, and we walk out like that. Jay was bad, Jay was very bad, the elections are good, I support the results of the 2022 election. This is what they're going to turn us into if you do not get to the bottom of what happened in 2020. I'm just saying, I'm that guy on the wall warning me. You've got to pressure your lawmakers. Do not take their lies. Do not take their excuses. Pressure them. And I beg you to consider running against them in a primary if they are resisting you on this, no matter how much you like them. If they're not going to stand up against their party leadership on this, then you might as well, then we are California already and just don't know it. Because that means that Cooper already runs this state, and that your legislators are just cashing a paycheck and enjoying the prestige they get and maybe angling for their next gig. But if they will not get us an audit, then we don't need them. Push them, push them, push them. Demand an audit of 2020 now. Okay, how to do it? Liberty First Grassroots. There's NC Audit Force Telegram page. Go for either of those groups, Liberty First Grassroots, LFG, or North Carolina Audit Force. Not to be confused with any other groups on Telegram that are pretending to care about this issue. North Carolina Audit Force cares about it, and Liberty First Grassroots care about it. Okay, that's it for today. And I did say I want to get out early, and hey, we did it under 45 minutes. Yay! Vote checker, and thank you for watching, and y'all have a blessed day.